Well, let me ask you a few questions.
Go ahead.
Um,
Please.
all right. Then.
I know I moved a lot. You want to hear about different jobs I've had? I was talking to somebody the other day. I guess my first job was delivering dentures for a dentist. One of my first jobs. I worked in grocery stores and delis and gas station. I bought a Lincoln flour truck when I was a kid and wasn't allowed to drive it, so I got rid of it.
You bought the truck hoping to get into business and you couldn't drive
I was working at a gas station and I just bought the flour truck. It was like a, I don't know, funny little vehicle. Never did drive it, but I bought it. A lot of people are frightened by failure, the fear of failure. Never really had that. I had the fear of success, however. I had a way of sabotaging just about everything I started. I don't know what that's about. Maybe behind that is a fear that I'm not good enough. A fear of intimacy, maybe. That might have started with when I was real young, and maybe it has something to do with my father dying when I was 8, or some stuff that might have happened before that. I don't know. A lot of people now are talking about the family of origin issues. I don't know what it is. My practice of my faith in God is such now that I have apparently no fears of success or failure or anything. I'm on fire. I'm giving up hospice. I quit hospice the other day. Thursday. This is Sunday. I've chosen to be focused on living rather than dying. I have more ambition right now to do something with this program that you and I are involved in than I've ever had. But I've had lots of jobs. I worked for a glass company and got fired from that. I broke an expensive mirror. Lost my job. Worked in night cleaning up the emergency room in a hospital. Lost that job. And just married to your mother and couldn't get up at 2 o'clock in the morning like they wanted me to. I had a lumberjack. Had all kinds of jobs in restaurants, stores. I liked retail a lot. I liked the Army. I liked being sent overseas during the Korean War. I did some work there, mostly playing basketball. Pleased the colonel of the 79th Battalion. Turned out I was still a pretty good athlete, even though I was drinking a lot. I went in service at 152. That was my running weight. And when I got out, I was 210. The uniform didn't even fit me anymore. I was supposed to go to Villanova, but they didn't have a program for education then. I think they were still a college, now a university. So instead of going there, I managed to get into State University of New York in Cortland on probation. I'm the only one that ever started there on probation. I promised the dean I'd buy him a beer, whatever. I found out he was a teetotaler. But if I got one mark lower than a B, I would leave the school. Never did get a mark that low after that. Which is incredible when you think about my high school experience, which took me 4.5 years of summer school to get out. Just counting my passing grades, I had a 69 average. And I was virtually a non-reader. And I didn't learn to read until I was in the Army, really. Now I can't read again. I can't see right now. I got some people helping me with that. We'll see what happens. Cataract surgery is probably going to help a lot. I miss seeing. I can't even see the TV anymore. I can't even see your face.
Do you remember your father's passing away?
Well, I was 8 years old. I intuitively knew something was wrong, or I heard something. But I remember going to my mother saying, something's wrong with Dad, what's wrong? she wouldn't tell me for a while, and then finally they did. They told me that he had died in a gutter in a rainstorm in Washington, D.C. from asthma. I suspect there was a drinking problem there, but I'm not sure. I remember going outside on the stoop. We were living on 152nd Street on the west side of Manhattan. Telling some, guess what? My dad died. I didn't experience the feeling at the time. And I think it was my grandfather, I'm not sure, that paid for us to go to St. Clair's Military Academy. And my sister and I and my brother was 2. And they lied about his age because he was so big. But he got sick when he was there in the first few weeks, so they shipped him out to be raised by Aunt Margaret. So he got the silver spoon for a while. I was jealous of him for a long time for that. And then when my mother remarried, I think I was about 14, then I guess he came to live with us when we got a home out in Long Island. And so we had Neil and Grace, my brother and sister, and then later on, Doug, our stepbrother, Doug Brown. I had a chance to change my name from Jim Nugent to Jim Brown. I don't know why I didn't, but I did. I don't know. Those were hard years. My stepfather was a serious alcoholic, and he finally got sober. Got 20 years of sobriety before he died. And a cranky son of a gun. I had trouble with him, but found out he never really worked the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Never bought the book. So I was grateful to hear that, because then I didn't have to be a cranky son of a gun like him. You know, might have turned out that way anyway. But when I came back from the service, I wanted to be a teacher. I was given a job in Manhattan in one of the parochial schools. I turned it down. I worked as a park director, recreation director for the city for a while. Then went to school at Cortland and did well. Finished school in 3 years instead of 4. Got the master's done in the next couple of years, part-time. While I was teaching, I became a lifeguard. Had all kinds of crazy jobs. Worked in a furniture store and helped a guy with a plastic covered seat business, and then started my own company called Chairman Company. Was doing upholstery work for kitchen and dining room chairs, and then expanded into 7 sales agencies and 3 stores. And lost my shirt because I didn't know what I was doing. And didn't make enough money to help support a big family. I loved teaching. I was good at it. I probably would have stayed with it, except that I had a serious smoking habit. And after 20 minutes of not smoking, I'd start detoxing. I needed a cigarette. So I'd have to leave the classroom to go to the faculty room to catch a quick smoke. And so I was looking for a job as a principal or anything else. I got out of the classroom, primarily because of the addiction of smoking. Worked for Harcourt Brace Yovanovitch. Harcourt Brace, I worked for a World Book Company. They were bought out by Harcourt Brace, and it became eventually Harcourt Brace from World to Harcourt Brace Yovanovitch in honor of the president of the company, who was a genius. I worked for that company 5 years, calling on the schools in Manhattan, the Bronx, Staten Island, Long Island, in the elementary school division. And, I don't know if I was good at it or not. Burnett Ball was the vice president of the company, and he sat me down and said, Jim, if you find that there's a competitive book that's better than ours, you recommend that book. I thought, oh my God, integrity in the publishing field. But that's how I experienced it. They were great people. Eventually I became kind of a consultant, go around giving these classes, did some exhibit work, and got promoted to director of all federal and special projects for Harcourt Brace Yovanovitch. But I also got invited to be assistant to the superintendent of schools out in Southampton, so I took that. became responsible for all compensatory education. That's where you were born, in Southampton. We hung a diaper on the flagpole saying it's a boy. So I remember that.
Is that the district in which you empowered the parents?
That was Southampton. They had 65%, excuse me, then 35% of the school district was non-white. Some small population of immigrant Polish people that were considered disadvantaged. You had the Indian reservation here in the territory for the school district, so there was lots of people with needs. And Bill Jones was the superintendent. He was fond of me, and he gave me a free hand to do a lot of stuff, and I did a lot of stuff. Got the state of New York put the first experimental pre-kindergarten program in my hands in Southampton. There I empowered the parents to make all the decisions. They hired, fired, could decide on the curriculum. They could decide on salaries. They came to me one day and they said, "Do we have all this power?" I said, "You bet." "Well, we canceled school on Friday now." I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, we decided we want to go to school on Friday. We don't know enough. And we're the parents." I thought, well, I just lost my job. Let's see if I could work it out so you go to school as well as the kids. That would be all right. I got my job back and we worked together. Would you believe I'm a pretty smart guy? But when I asked them what they wanted to learn, I would have never predicted it. The first thing they wanted to know was, how do you have a birthday party for kids without spending any money? Would you put that in the curriculum? I said, okay, we can work that out. What's the next thing? They said, we want to learn how to use sewing machines. I said, so, you don't even have sewing machines. And they said, what's the point of having it if you don't know how to use them? Okay. So we had to put that in their curriculum. And it started because I wouldn't edit their local newspaper and let the mistakes flow. And they saw that they needed to do some learning, and that's what started the ball going. What I wanted, and I think I got it, what I wanted was I wanted the parents to accept some responsibility for their children's success in school. And I got that. I got that by allowing them to participate in a major way in all decisions regarding their education. They did some strange things. We had some money in our budget to build some outside storage areas for the outdoor equipment, and they wouldn't let us buy it. They wanted the fathers and the men in the students' lives to build it. It cost us twice as much, but they saw that there was a need to have more male figures in their lives, and they insisted on doing it that way. Well, we couldn't have got away with that, but as parents they could. They did some other things. They fired a psychologist. They thought she was getting uppity, and she was. So I had to live with that sucker. They made the teachers and all the faculty, everybody had to use their first name. Miss Mary and Miss Emily and all that stuff, Miss Jen and all that stuff. They taught me a lot. They had one student that was a very serious hardship case, and they wanted to throw him out. They said he wasn't appropriate for the program. And I remember I went to the superintendent and I said, Bill, can I have a couple weeks off to go in there and show these people how to do this with this kid? And big mistake. This kid was literally chained to an iron bed while the mother went out and did her tricks, and he was like a little animal. He had no shut-off valves at all. He wanted to ride the tricycle, in the gym, let him go. He wouldn't stop. When he had a buffet served for some luncheons, he couldn't stop eating. Just no shut-off valve. So I had to learn something about education, and in a hard way. And I had to go to the apology, to make apology to the faculty and to the superintendent, and let this kid get into another program that we weren't capable of meeting his needs. it's an important lesson in education. Is, you know, we wanted to do everything for everybody, and some days we can't. We have to say, sorry, we can't do it. It was a hard lesson for me. I had a hard time with that. It's like I failed at something I really wanted to do. But I think giving up is major. I think we need to do more of that. We have to say, no, we can't do this. Today, I've got a kid in my care right now, and he says, I'm not willing to do what you require here. I'm not keeping him. He's gone. He's getting picked up at 5 o'clock today. He'll be gone. I think I'm now able to admit that I'm helpless and say, oh, I can't do something. It wasn't used to be like that. Maybe because I'm an old fart, you know. I can say, no, I can't do this today. But I learned it back then. I went to the University of Chicago, did some stuff there. Before that, I was working in Washington, D.C., would you believe, as a research associate for the United States Office of Education. This was the late 60s. They had a lot of money, and I wanted to have some say in where it went. The people that hired me in D.C. had already left by the time I got there, and all the promises that were made were unknown by the new people. And so I left when I got a job as a school principal, and I was the director of continuing education. I was director of district-wide reading, of elementary education. I was director of, to believe, of migrant education. It was in Marlboro, New York. They had a large population of migrants for apples. So I had some say in that field. Took on the district principal. You had a lot of first and second generation immigrants that didn't have much aspirations for school. So I went to him and I said, I got a plan to change that. And he turned me down. He said, it's too good for this blankety blank community. And so I resigned the next day and called up the Stone Foundation in Chicago, who had made an offer. They hired Booz and Allen, consultant firm, and they interviewed everybody I had to work for 2 hours each, and still offered me the job. It was a great job. It was I could name my own salary, get a first-class move from New York to Chicago with a wife and 8 kids, and I had total freedom and unlimited budget to work with 6 or 7 other specialists to design a positive program that would help people change their lives for the better. And it's financed by Clement Stone's foundation. I was one of the 7 originators. I was the one I thought that the least informed. The difference between the rest of the specialists and me is I was the educator. I could come up with a way to deliver the process. And I worked with Dr. Herbert Otto, Dr. Billy Sharp, Dr. Lila Swell, Dr. North Withrop Schultz, who turned out to be one of my favorite people. About the only person I ever met that could actually live the positive motivation program that Mr. Stone was looking for. I could talk a good game, but he could live it. And he became a very close friend. I miss him. He's gone now. It's cancer. Married a woman in her 20s. He was in his late 50s. He came to me and said, what do you think, Jeff? I said, go for it. He did. They turned out to have a fine marriage. A couple of kids. Turned out good. That was a special experience for me. I don't know if you ever had an unlimited budget and total freedom, but it's pretty scary stuff. I hired 19 people from all over the world to come and do some serious writing with all the technical and human help you could give anybody at the Marriott in Chicago by the airport. And, their job was to come up with their special course of study, come up with a curriculum that would work with this positive motivation stuff.
Hey Jim, is there aluminum foil anywhere?
Bottom drawer over there.
Bottom drawer, thank you.
And When it was all done, I had a 6 foot, well actually about a 3 foot high of manuscripts. And so Whit talked me into making a copy and putting the originals in a safe. And I started going through them, and it was really trash. And he knew a lot, but writing a course of study that you could deliver to students takes a special talent. They might have had the knowledge and the experience, but they didn't know how to write. So he hired this guy, Jamie McRae, in Barrington, Illinois. To believe back in the late 60s, he was getting paid $500 a day. I don't know what that would mean today in actual cash, but he was a genius. And he taught me how to write, actually, and he wouldn't do anything unless the company that had hired him assigned the top dog to work with him on a one-to-one basis in his office in Barrington, Illinois. And the office was all industrial cork, with a little tiny shelf all around with push pins and 3x5 cards and magic markers. And we'd talk about stuff and he'd write it down and then get it all lined up, and revise everything and line it up again, dictate that into some kind of recording, and then turn it over to a part-time clerk who would transcribe and come back, and we'd edit that and we'd be done. It's incredible. I worked with him for 6 months, and we came up with some really good stuff. He was a genius, and today, since that time, I've helped people with their doctoral dissertations and get it done in no time using that system. He taught me how to write. Great skill, great put together some nice stuff as a result of that. When I left the foundation in '70, I had been doing some writing on my own, and they wanted me to turn it in, and I wouldn't do it, hoping I could get to Mr. Stone. I was sitting in his office one day, and study at home, and they had 25 of his big shots there, and he asked, "Do you have any idea how to change the schools and to put this program in the schools?" And I said, "Yeah. Simple. Just give them workbooks and textbooks and teachers' editions. That's what schools do these days. That's how the world turns in most classrooms. 90% of the teachers, 90% of the time, are at that material-centered level. So you want to change what's going on. Give them the material." He gave me $1 million that morning. And 3 days later, they took it away from me. They didn't think that a foundation could publish and sell a good program, that it needed a for-profit corporation. And I argued the point, but I wouldn't give them back the materials that I wrote on my own. I said I wanted to see Mr. Stone. They wouldn't let me do it. I was convinced that Mr. Stone would have let me do it, and I was the only one with publishing experience. And anyway, I left there with the rights to the materials that I had developed, and he had purchased the research from his own foundation for $3 million with IRS approval. So I figured I got a $3 million gift on my way out, and I had some fun with it. At one time, most of the schools, secondary schools and junior colleges and colleges in Florida used my programs, and a smattering of schools around the country, and all the California youth authorities facilities used my programs, bought my books and stuff. One time I had an order for 600,000 copies of the basic books and the Ames books, and Donna C. from RC said, "Can you get the price down a little bit?" Back then they were selling for, I think, $18 net. I could have said, I had a $12 or $15 sound. She'd have jumped at it. I was so frightened of success that when I called her back, she said, "I'm sorry. The president put a freeze on the budget. Can't order them." And I blamed it on the president until it suddenly dawned on me. It took 2.5 months to call her back. The books only cost $3.52 to produce. I could have been a millionaire overnight. I was drinking a lot. That might have had something to do with it. Anyway, that's what happened with that stuff. I produced a lot of materials, and over the years, I'd get a little bit motivation going and try to do some stuff. Went back into school administration again. Worked for Harcourt in the old days, but in the latter days, then I ended up working for Apple Century Croft as director of education. But I was drinking a lot. It was crazy. Getting involved in stuff I shouldn't have. I don't know. They were bought out. That division was bought out by another outfit, and I was left unemployed again. Took the job as a principal in Rochester, New York, Walt Disney School. I was going to straighten up and fly right and go to church and behave myself. Didn't last long. I was getting drunk at PTA meetings, and patting the female nurses and parents on the ass, and just making a jerk out of myself. Anyway, new superintendent took over and didn't want me, didn't like me around. Forced a confrontation, I resigned. Took the family to California, get a fresh start, otherwise known as the Geographic. On the way to California, I was a representative for 3 different corporations. I had 2 of my own. I was working with Dr. Glass's Schools Without Failure and Institute for Reality Therapy. I had some consultant assignments. I found a home in Laguna Beach, and I was flying high. And wrote a whole new series of programs for schools. Had demonstration centers, national demonstration centers in Newport Beach and Ocean View School District in Huntington Beach. Things were going, doing a little consulting here and there. My drinking got so out of hand, I lost it all. I just couldn't do it. One tragedy after another. Ran away from home. Got the Cadillac limousine repossessed. Got Maryland take me back. We tried again. That was a screw up. Ended up in living in a retreat center in Pala, California. And that's where I got sober. It was a crazy place. Doing a lot of casino work and trying to get together to do a lot of family retreats. I couldn't seem to work it out in that facility just once or twice. And we ended up using some other facilities and had arguments with the priest director, Mirko Flack, about a flat. He wasn't wrapped too tight either, I think. But, and then finally I got struck sober. Actually, I was doing a workshop for the 400 religious leaders of Southern California in the San Diego Arena. And I'd gotten drunk and a lot of trouble the night before, and I was trying to get it together. And 2 o'clock in the afternoon is when I'm on, and I couldn't get it. I was too drunk. Tried everything, a little aspirin, a little drink, a little coffee, a little shower. Couldn't function. I got scared. And here I was. I couldn't do my job. So I prayed. I said, God, please help me. Don't let me drink anymore, no matter what. And I gave that workshop. All I remember is going up on the stage. That's the last thing I remember until the next day. Total blackout. It wasn't my first blackout, but it was a total blackout. And I remember pouring the booze out in our home, thinking, this is crazy. I'm only going to just use another bum check. And that was it. Never drank again. Got talked into going to AA. I did that. Got so frightened of drinking again, I did everything they told me to do. Been sober now almost 32 and a half, going on 33 years. And it was worse, early years of sobriety, it's worse than my drinking stuff. Couldn't seem to get a job, I couldn't seem to do my job. I had lots of, the kids were special, and the 6 oldest kids brought home between $40 and $60 a week to help support the family. In Maryland, had 2.5 jobs. I was walking around waiting for the big deal. I think the first year I was sober, I brought in $7,000. Cost $49,000 to run the family. We were running out of tape.